Shila Gurudev ki jai. Srimad Mahaprabhu ki jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Grantara Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Shri Bhramara-gita ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premanand Hari Hari Bol. Virbhav Mahosabditi Shri Bakreshwar Pandit ki jai. So, pranam to all of you. Good morning from Raleigh. And more than welcome. Today we are continuing with our series of lectures on the Bhramara Gītā, the song of the Bumblebee, one of the main songs in the Bhagavatam, Srimad-Bhagavatam, Grantaraj, 10th Canto, one of 6 main songs expressed by the gopis. The last of them, if we may, especially sung by the topmost of all gopis, Śrīmatī Rādhārāṇī. So today we are in our 12th meeting, where we will be studying verse number 7 of the Bhramara Gītā. After 5 introductory sessions we had trying to give context to the whole song of the Bumblebee, we are starting to study one after the other, all of these 10 verses of the Bhramara Gītā. So today's verse number 7, which corresponds with verse number 18 in the 47th chapter in the 10th canto in the Bhagavad narrative. So as usual, we will begin, first of all, by doing some brief recap, or I don't know how brief, but we will try our best, connected to our previous lecture, where we were studying verse number 6 from the Bhramara Gītā. And the interim situation there was that the Bumblebee was suggesting that Krishna in Mathura was absorbed in Sri Radha, which is true, as we always mention. I mean, Sri Radha hears in her Divyan Mat the Bumblebee saying that, interprets his humming in those lines. Krishna is absorbed in you, remembering you, and Sri Radha will reply to that idea in this verse we are now doing a recap of, speaking about Krishna's cruelty, not only in this lifetime, but in his previous descents, in previous lifetimes. All of that she heard from Purnamasi, from the lips of the Gurvi, of the spiritual teacher of the whole Braj. So Sri Radha said, like a hunter, he cruelly shot the king of monkeys with arrows. And because he was conquered by a woman, he disfigured another woman who came to him with lusty desires. And even after consuming the gifts of Bali Maharaj, he bound him up with ropes, as if he were a crow. So let us give up all friendship with this dark-complexioned boy, even if we can't give up talking about him. So as we mentioned, maybe this is the most famous verse of the whole Bhramara Gītā, which is in itself a famous section of the Bhagavad, as we mentioned, considered by many the most important chapter of the whole Bhagavatam, which exactly corresponds with Mahaprabhu's experience in the Gambhira, these most esoteric moments of the Absolute. And in connection to Mahaprabhu, there are some reasons why we may say this is the most important and well-known verse in the Bhramara Gītā. This verse appears twice in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, invoked by Mahaprabhu, when Mahaprabhu, just before accepting sannyas and being imbibed in Radha Bhav, especially in the man of Sri Radha, in the sulky mood, jealous mood of Sri Radha. So we know this famous pastime when Sriman Mahaprabhu is chanting Gopi, 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 and someone comes to him and say, why you are chanting Gopi? You shouldn't chant Gopi. That's not prescribed in Shastra anywhere. You should chant Krishna. But again, at this moment, Mahaprabhu was in Radha Bhav, and especially in Man, which means she's angry with Krishna. So when someone says to him, chant Krishna, and Mahaprabhu, in this section of the Chaitanya Bhagavat, twice, Vrindavan Das Thakur mentions, he quotes this verse of the Bhagavatam, saying, you are telling me to chant Krishna, but he shot Bali from hiding from a tree. He disfigured Surpanaka. He cheated Bali Maharaj. So twice in this narrative of the Chaitanya Bhagavatam, Mahaprabhu invokes this Bhagavat verse from the Bhramara Gītā to justify why one should not chant Gopi. One should not chant Krishna, sorry. And after that, as we know, he ran after that person with a stick in his hand, trying to beat him. And all this took to the Sanyas-lila of Sri Chaitanya there. So it's a very interesting also connection we can make between, again, Bhramara-gita, Gaur-lila, and the Sanyas-lila of Mahaprabhu, which we have trying to connect a lot regarding the inner meaning for the Sanyas-lila of Mahaprabhu, and how he, through that, is trying to repay the gopis, trying to renounce all family ties, as the gopis did for him in Krishna Lila and so on. So these may be some of the main reasons why this verse is so appreciated by Gaudiyas. So in this verse, Sri Radha is showing in the Bhramara-gita, going back to the Bhramara-gita narrative, she's expressing Sanchari Bhav. Remember, everything that Sri Radha is saying all along these verses are Sanchari Bhavs, different ecstatic emotions which have a transitory nature and nourish the Staiva, the main emotion that defines herself in connection to Krishna Madhurya Bhav. So here she's showing fear as a Sanchari Bhav. She's fearful of Krishna because of his cruelty, that she's not even able to pronounce the name, directly the color of his hue. She's not able to say black. What to speak of mentioning his name directly. So she's not saying Krishna or Syam, which also can mean black, but she refers to him with the term asita in this verse. So asita means non-whitish, non-white, which is another way of indirectly saying black. So she implies with all this, everything that is black makes me fearful, makes me tremble. Krishna has a black heart. He's black on the outside, he's black on the inside. So I don't want any connection with anything black. So in this verse, she again refers mainly, at least in the explicit meaning of this verse, she's referring to Krishna's previous avatars, like Sri Ramachandra and Vamandev. The first line speaks about about Sri Ramachandra acting in a very cruel way. And all of this converging in Krishna's cruelty again. And Ramachandra's Dhirodhata, a very sober hero, Maryad Purushottam, the very personification of being a right person, if you will, dharmic person. So if even Ram has defects, what to speak of Krishna, who is not Dhirodhata, he's Dhira Lalita, a carefree lover, and so on. But Ramachandra acted cruelly, again, with Bali, the king of monkeys. He attacked from his back, and he killed a monkey. You cannot even eat the meat. A hunter will kill an animal, Mrigayor, will subsist on the animal's flesh, meat. But a monkey, you cannot eat the monkey's flesh, and you won't sell that in the market. So why you are killing the monkey? That's even a hunter will criticize such an action, Sri Radha implies here. So if he's acting in such an abominable way as Ram, what to speak of Krishna? All this converges into the figure of Krishna, the psychology of Sri Radha. So with this first example, she refers to Krishna's cruelty. In the second line, she says, he's attached as Ram, again, to Sita. So attached in a lasting way to a lady, he disfigured another lady, Surpanaka, who approached him trying to please him or be pleased by him. And Ramchandra as a Kshatriya should have reciprocated with her. That's the duty of a Kshatriya. But he didn't do because of attachment to his other lady, to the other wife, Sita, last. And again, as we say, all these examples could be used to glorify Ramachandra, basically. You can say, I mean, he attacked Bali to protect Sugriva, and he made an Ekapatni Brata as a king, only with Sita he's married, so that's why he didn't respond to Surpanaka. But Sri Radha is presenting that in the context of her bhav and criticizing him. So first line, cruelty, second line, last, and the third line, you may say, oh, but he was a Kshatriya, Ramachandra, he has some license to be cruel or whatever. But as a Brahmana, he came as a Brahmin like Bhamandev, and he cheated Bali Maharaj, asking only 3 steps of land. He took everything from him. He tied him as a crow, like Bali, as if Bali were a crow, or Bhamandev behaved as a crow, also like taking all the offerings and then like hurting the person that was feeding you. And then he sent him to the underworld, to Patalaloka. So this third example has to do with Krishna's deceit and ingratitude. Again, all this converges in Krishna. It has nothing to do with Ram or Bhamandev, but specifically with Krishna. Of course, these other figures are avatars of Krishna. So this is the general meaning of the verse. And also Sanatana Goswami gives another purport to this verse, speaking directly about Krishna, all of these lines. First line is that Kapindran, referring to the king of monkeys, refers to one who shakes the earth, which refers to a bull. And this refers to how Krishna killed Aristasur, which in the eyes of Radha here is worthy of criticism because he's a bull. He's a personification of Dharma. We know this gave rise to the whole Radha Kunda and Shyamakunda Lila appearance of that plagues. The second line is, he was attracted to the deformed lady, Kubja, in Mathura. He didn't deform a lady, disfigure a lady, but he was attracted to one. She was a henchwoman, henchmark woman in Mathura, which we know actually Kubja was attracted, and Krishna reciprocated eventually. And the third example, instead of referring to Vamandev with Bali, referred to Krishna with Indra. He took everything from the offering that the Brajavasis were doing to Indra in the Govardhan Lila and so on. So also in this verse, interestingly, we see this example of Aishwarya coming to the surface, which Shira is acknowledging previous avatars of Bhagavan, and therefore Krishna is avatari. But as we mentioned, the Aishwarya, when it comes in separation in the Brajavasis, not in union, only nourishes the Madhurya, only nourishes their intimacy to Krishna. That's a unique psychology in Braj. Even if Aishwarya comes to the fore, they will only increase their attachment to him in terms of intimacy. So in this verse, Sri Radha ends up saying, let's give up all friendship with any black complexion entity and personality, anything that has this color, that. And the bumblebee at this point, according to Sri Radha's psychology, will ask her, but if you say all the things and criticize him so much from tip to toe, why you cannot stop speaking about him? And that's when Sri Radha finishes the verse with maybe the most famous part of the verse, Dustyajas tat katarta, which means it's very difficult to stop speaking about Krishna, not to say impossible. In other words, he's saying, I can live without Krishna, but I cannot live without Krishna Katha, which is a very important lesson for us sadhakas in our particular type of separation from Krishna. How important it is for us to take shelter in Harikatha. In today's verse, we will see that the idea further developed. So this particular verse is an example of avajalpa, which has to do when a lover, impelled by jealousy and fear, declares that Srihari is unworthy of her attachment because of his harshness, lustiness, and dishonesty. These 3 points in these first 3 lines of this verse. And this is called avajalpa. So to further illustrate that, last class we also shared some verses from the Hamsadutta from the end, when Lalita sent the message to the Swami, to Krishna. And in the end, she referred to Krishna in connection to the different members of the Das avatars. So, and one verse also from Vidagdha Madhava in this same connection, since we were speaking in Das avatar terms. So today we will continue with the following verse, which is kind of connected with the previous verse in terms of Harikatha, and what's the effect of Harikatha and so on. So before going to the verse in itself, let's connect one verse with the other, the previous verse with today's verse. There's always some in between the lines, ideas given by our Purvacharyas. So Srila Sridhar Swami, the famous ancient commentator on the Bhagavad, in connection with the previous verse, again, Sri Radha ended up saying, Dustyajas tat katarta, is impossible to stop speaking about Krishna. It's impossible for me to give up Harikatha. So she continues saying, and moreover, we also know that discussions about him uproot the threefold principles of success in life, known sometimes as three varga, dharma, artha, kama, purusharthas, considered by most goals of life. So even though we know that Harikatha is uprooting these principles, yet still we cannot give up. So what can we do? And thereafter this, thinking like this, Sri Swami says, Sri Radha will speak the next verse, today's verse, which is verse 7 of the Bhramara-gita. So I will share the verse with you in the chat section here in Zoom, and I ask someone of the ones connected if you can share that in the thread in Facebook, please. So I'll read the verse first in Sanskrit, and then we will go to the English translation and try to unpack some of its meaning there. Jadanucharita lila karana piyusa viprut sakridada nabi dhuta dvandva dharma vinasta Sapadi-griha kutumbam dinam utsriyatina Bahava iha vihanga bhikshu charyam charanti. So Sri Radha says, to hear about the pastimes that Krishna regularly performs is nectar for the ears. For those who relish just a single drop of that nectar, even once, their dedication to material duality is ruined. Many such persons have suddenly given up their wretched homes and families and, themselves becoming wretched, traveled here to Vrindavan to wander about like birds, begging for their living. This is a very special, unique verse, as we will see, with lots of meanings, lots of implications and nuanced ideas present there. So let's try to first go to the word by word meaning here, and then we will try to further unfold the content. So first line says, Jad Anucharita-lila, Karna Piyusa Viprut. So Yat means whose. Anucharita refers to constant, something that is constantly performed. Implies some dynamism, ongoing situation. And Lila. Lila refers to pastimes. So it has to do with Krishna's pastimes, as you will see. So what happens with these pastimes, ongoing, dynamic exploits? Karna Piyusa. Karna Piyusa. Karna means ear, or for the ear in this case, and Piyusa means nectar. So Karna Piyusa is like, say, Karnamrita, nectar for the ears. Viprut. Viprut says a drop of such hearing, as we will see, of such nectar. And the next line continues the idea. Sakrita dana vituta dvandva dharma vinashta. So sakrit means even once. Adana. Adana means by partaking, by relishing even once, one single drop of such nectar for the ears, which consists of the descriptions of Krishna's lila. What happens? What's the result of such hearing? Viduta dvanda dharma vinashta. So viduta means entirely removed. Dvanda, dvandva, the very word it says, is duality. Dvandva, duality, dharma, propensities. So it has to do with dual propensities. Totally removed. All dual propensity, like we say here, all dedication to material duality is removed. Vinasta, to further establish. Vinasta means ruined. So this is uprooted, and all prospect for so-called material success is ruined. So we will start to see, maybe you already are getting this sense that Sri Radha seems to be condemning something, but actually she's praising that thing that she seems to be condemning. In the third line, she says, Sapadi griha kutumbam dinam utriyadina. So sapadi means immediately. All this happens immediately. It doesn't take too much time even. That's such the power of Harikatha, this idea. Griha kutumbam. Griha means their homes. Kutumbam means families. Dinam means wretched. And utriya means rejecting. So such people who enter in touch with such nectar for the ears in the form of Harikatha immediately abandon house, family, become the wretched house and families. Utriya means they abandon, and dina, they themselves become wretched. She says, and the last line further qualifies the whole idea. What happens with such people? Bahava iha vihanga bhikshu charyam charanti. So Bahava means many people, not only one person can give testimony of this, but many people. Again, remember, all this is being said from Sri Radha's perspective. She herself is the main example of this, if you will, leaving aside all social and family considerations and just running into the forest and becoming like a mad woman living in the forest. That's her present situation now in separation from Krishna and Braj. So Bahava means many persons have done this. I'm not alone in this, basically. Iha means here in Braj, coming here. Vihanga means like birds, but implies like birds. Like birds for bhikshu charyam. Bhikshu means begging, and charya means the livelihood. They adopt the means of subsistence called Madhukari. And she's speaking to a Madhukari here, to have bumblebees. It's a appropriate example. Charanti. Charanti means they pursue that lifestyle. They come here to Braj and act in that way. So that's the word by word translation of this verse. So let's go with what our Purvacharyas and commentators have said to us in order of seniority, as you know, as we have been doing, starting with Sridhar Swami and then continuing with the other Goswamis. Today we won't have purport given by Sanatan Goswami Pad, so we'll go to Sri Jiva Goswami and then Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Pad. So Srila Sridhar Swami, apart from what we already shared, he paraphrases here Sri Radha mentioning the following. She says through him, his Krishna's activities, anucharita, again, means activities, ongoing affairs, are his pastimes. In other words, an important point, whenever Krishna acts, that's not normal action, ordinary karma, impelled by the desire to enjoy this world, control, by karmic depth that is taking us to further act in that same direction. It has not to do with an emptiness that we need to fulfill through reactionary work, but it's just out of fullness, as our Guru Maharaj was saying yesterday. Krishna is totally satisfied, and when he's totally satisfied, one plays. And in that play, he finds some purpose to attain. That's what we call lila. Krishna says that in the Gita. Janma karma chame divyam. So, Janma karma jame divyam. My birth and my activities are divya, are divine. So that means lila. I do not engage in karma. If you want to use the word karma, in the Gita he says divya karma. My activities, karma means actions, are divya. So that's what we call lila, divine exploits, play. So Sri Radha makes this point to begin with, even in the context of apparently criticizing Krishna, saying his activities are lila, are not karma. They are, in other words, being engaged in under the shelter of the Swarup Shakti, not under Maya Shakti. This is not ordinary affairs. So such actions are nectar for the ears, karna piyasa, karnamrita. And by just once honoring one drop of it, people will find their propensities of duality, such as material attachment and so on, eradicated. And they will become ruined. She's speaking, again, praise in the form of criticism. It seems she's promoting material life and welfare in this world, and say, be careful with that. If you want that, all that will be eventually ruined, and you will become like low-class people. Again, Parok Shabbat, from tip to toe, in direct speech, glorifying Harikatha. So many verses in the Bhagavatam glorifying Harikatha. So many beautiful verses. Satam prasangam mama vidisam vido bhavanti hirit karna rasayana katha. The Bhagavatam will praise Sri Harikatha's rasayana, like an Ayurvedic term, like an elixir, like a tonic, sanjivani, that will give new life. Nibrita tarshairupagiyamanat, mavosadachutra mano viramat, is famous word from the Bhagavad. Even this Harikatha is a tonic, but not only like an Ayurvedic medicine that you have to take when you are sick. And when you are cured, healthy, you don't need to take it. There are some Ayurvedic herbs that you can take even when you are healthy, that they keep increasing your health. So in the same way, Harikatha is not only to be taken to get freed from material attachment, but also nibrita tarshair. Those who are free from all attachment, like Sukadev Goswami, they find attachment to that. Indeed, this famous verse is said to be one of the few verses that Sukadev Goswami heard while running into the forest, and Vyasadeva made him return, send the good cutter and say, recite these verses. So he himself is proof of that. He was Atmaram. So in that context, Sri Radha is actually glorifying Harikatha for those who have ears to hear that. So she said this here. And she continues saying that people give up their miserable homes and families and become miserable themselves, devoid of pleasure, material pleasure. Just like birds, they become beggars, barely maintaining their existence. Therefore, this topic should be given up, yet still we cannot do so. Again, she concludes with this idea. I cannot give up Krishna Katha. I cannot give, and that's the idea. You shouldn't give up Krishna Katha. She's indirectly showing to us an example to follow. addicted to Krishna Katha. And Sridhar Swami also in his Bhavarta-dīpika, purport to the Bhagavatam, he explains that according to Sanskrit grammar, the last two words of the second line of this verse, which are dharma vinasta, which means their propensities are ruined, their material propensities are ruined, may also, say Sridhar Swami, be divided as dharma avinashta, which inverts the meaning, as you know. The A at the beginning creates the opposite meaning. So then the entire line becomes part of a single compound, and the meaning of which is that hearing about Krishna cleanses one of irreligious duality, and thus one is not vanquished, avinashta, by material illusion. In other words, Krishna Katha protects one, enlightens one, and so on. And also, similarly, Sridhar Swami mentions that the word dina in this verse, which is translated as wretched, can also be given the alternative meaning of dhira, which means sober. So such a person who enters in touch with Harikatha becomes spiritually sober, and thus gives up attachment to a temporary material relationships. And also Sridhar Swami says that the word vihanga, which is translated as birds, normally, in this case refers to a specific type of birds, which are the swans, the hamsas, which are the paramahamsas, the ultimate, the symbol of essential discrimination. Sometimes say that they can take milk from a mixture of milk and water. And also, in the context of begging like birds, such a hamsas or paramahamsas, they execute the occupation of begging, which refers to the stage of paramahamsa, great sages which just subsist on whatever comes to their life, taking the essence of everything. So again, on one level it may be seen as a criticism, but on another level it's a praise. You have to do that. You have to run in that direction. So the implicit conclusion in this verse, in terms of parokshabad, in direct language, is therefore this message of Krishna, about Krishna, Harikatha, remember last verse, tat katartha, which refers Harikatha, or the goal of our speech is to speak about him. These messages are impossible to put aside. Because why? Tat katartha, they constitute the supreme goal of life. Kata artha, artha means also something to attain, that which is to be attained, necessity. So ultimately this verse is saying that to us, especially to us sadhakas. So these are some words from Srila Sridhar Swami's Bhavarta-dīpika. Now let's continue with Srila Jiva Goswami's Laghu Vaishnava Toshni commentary and some other ideas found in his Krama Sandarbha, and especially in his Gopal Champu, which is a retelling of the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam in a very beautiful way. So according to the Gopal Champu, Sri Jiva mentions that at this moment, Sri Radha Thakurani paused for a minute, reflected, and spoke this verse, saying, those who praise his character, again, not mentioning Krishna directly, are influenced by Maya. I will say yes, Yoga Maya. Let that be, she says. But by the influence of its Maya, such glorification quickly uproots the essence of Dharma, which is the wealth of married life. Again, she's speaking with deep insight about this, deep realization. She herself is the main example of this, Parakya. It makes them embrace forbidden conduct and reject household life. Again, Parakya, Sarvadharma Pariteja. It makes them poverty-stricken or stricken. And finally, they end up begging like birds. Sri Radha in the forest. Her home is the forest, and for her, the forest is home, and the home is the forest. So Sri Radha continues, how can I describe his cruelty? Even those people who hear a little of his pastimes become cruel. By association with the cruel one, you become cruel. So according to Sri Jiva, after thinking like this, it is that Sri Radha speaks the present verse, saying that Krishna's activities are for his own use, like independent play, whimsical play, like that of the small child who is playing just without purpose. As we mentioned, his actions are without purpose because he has nothing to attain. He's fully accomplished, being Bhagavan, Atmaram. But in the context of his Atmaramata, of his self-satisfaction, he plays. And inside that play, he finds something to accomplish. Pararama. But again, She rather seems to be criticizing all that. So these activities of Krishna should be criticized since they are contrary to activities for people's benefit. These pastimes are nectar for the ear, karna piyasa, but in meaning, they gave pain to the mind. For the ear tastes them sweetly, nicely, but when they go to the mind, you reach out the implications of that, oh, they give pain. And they are not profuse, but scant, and are eaten only once and tasted only slightly from a far-off place. So with all this, Sri Radha actually showing her thirst, unquenched her thirst for Harikatha. It's never enough. We can always hear more. Ananta Katha Rasasya Kim Brahma Janmavir, says Siyuda in the Bhagavatam after this. And how this Harikatha affects oneself, says Sri Jiva and Gopal Shampu. First, as if faultless, these talks smear the ear, and like a tongue with their nectar are smearing the ear. Later, they enter the intelligence and start to agitate there, like a drink, like a poisonous drink made of poisonous datura powder, which is a venomous and poisonous plant, make powder mixed with sugar. So it's very sweet, but it's poisonous. Then Sri Radha says, according to Jiva Prabhu, I think they are not birds, but human householders. All these human householders that were made to become beggars, bewildered by these songs about Krishna and beaten by their relatives. Now they have become beggars, like birds. And by this, by hearing this, by entering in touch with this sound about Krishna, relationship between couples is destroyed. Says Sri Radha again, Parakiya. Parakiya is Sri Radha is married to her so-called husband Abhimanyu for the sake of Lila, but the attraction toward Krishna make her cut all those ties and don't care about anything and just run behind the flute again. So such people become like birds. After hearing the pastimes of Krishna just once, they will give up all consideration. They will give up their poor fathers, poor mothers, wives, husbands. They themselves will become poor and wretched. And arriving here at the place of pastimes, that means Vrindavan, that's where all this, if you hear about Krishna Lila, the people will run up after that place where all the things they are hearing about took place. So they arrive here, she says, to Braj, and they start to beg for a living somehow or other. And interestingly, Sri Jiva says that instead of Dina, we can interpret Dina as Dira, as Sridhar Swami said, but the idea of Dira, sober person, in this case, takes another form, takes an idea of further criticism by Sri Radha. Dira means sober or undisturbed, because such people will become undisturbed due to hard-heartedness. Their heart will become hard, like Krishna's. By hearing about the cruel one, they will become cruel. By hearing about the one whose heart is hard, they will become Dira. So in this case, Dira is not used to glorify. He who hears Harikatha and becomes sober because of transcending material attachment, but his heart becomes hard like Krishna's. And Sri Jiva concludes with paraphrasing Sri Radha saying, particularly, there are many birds here in Braj which are inclined to sing because of absorption in him. Again, always in him. They act like beggars for a living, and she asks to the bumblebee then, to the Madhukari, are you one among them? You seem like a bird. You are flying and you try to sing about Krishna. And usually these birds sing about his pastimes, but we do not take pleasure in that. So how can your singing his pastimes then give us pleasure? Even those birds who are singing are in pain. They do not find themselves pleasure in that. So how can your singing, your humming, your buzzing give us pleasure then? So at the end, she ends up insulting the bumblebee, if you will. So these are some of the revelations that Srila Jiva Goswami Pad shares with us concerning the meaning of this verse. So let us conclude our series of commentaries by going to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's Sarartha Darshini, his commentary on the Bhagavatam. Sarartha Darshini, that which allow us to have darshan, darshini, which allows us to see the sara artha, the very essence of that which is to be attained, the ultimate purport of everything. So according to Srila Chakrabarti Pad, in this verse, Sri Radha is saying that narrations of Krishna, of Kṛṣṇa-lila, Krishna's pastimes, create sorrow for the entire world. She's not only speaking for herself, again. Just hearing about the pastimes of Krishna, which are performed every moment, as we mentioned, anucharita, which may also have the philosophical implication that these leelas are always taking place somewhere in some planet Earth of some material universe, as we know. Just hearing about this is nectar for the ears. So what to speak of the joy one gets by understanding their meaning? Again, we are going back to the other possibility of interpretation in this verse. Overtly, there is criticism, but in a more implicit way, there is praise to the power of Harikatha. So if only hearing Harikatha, a drop of it just once, is nectar for the ears. What to speak if you really understand the meaning of that, the full, all the implications of every one of these lines and all the different layers of meaning as they are presented by great personalities like Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So like a way of, this may be also considered like Kaimutya Nyaya. Here the verse is saying, even one drop of this nectar completely destroys the propensities of duality. So Kaimutya Nyaya means, what if? Now, if this is so, only with a drop of this nectar, what to speak about being drenched in an ocean of Harikatha? So this is a very important point here also. So even one drop of this destroys all. Of course, we may ask, this is a classical question, we may ask why. I mean, I have heard so many hours of Harikatha and still I have duality propensity. So the next question for us is, did I really hear Harikatha as I should be? Which was my role as a hearer? Because the result is there is no arthabad, there is no exaggeration here. Like all these verses we find in the scripture, if you just chant Hari's name once, half the syllable, and your heart is not melting, that means some offense is there. It's not a script shastra's exaggerating of, or lavamatra sadhu sangha sarva siddhi hoy, only for 1 microsecond, nanosecond of association with sadhu sarva siddhi hoy, all perfection come. And we may ask, well, I have had so many hours with them, still siddhi is not coming. So again, we have to think about what's association and how much we're engaging in that. As our Guru Maharaj will say, all the things that the Shastras say that are not exaggeration take place at every moment in Nitya Navadvip. All the things, chanting one moment of Srinam, one moment of association, one moment of hearing Harikatha, one drop, all the symptoms, all these results comes and happens over and over again. So that's a reality. So here in this verse again, some Kaimutya Nyaya is there. Only one drop destroys all these propensities, as well as propensities of mutual friendship between woman and man, says Sri Vishwanath, paraphrasing Sri Radha. If a wife, he further clarifies, if a wife hears discussions about Krishna, she immediately gives up affection for her husband, in the sense of material attachment for him. And if a husband hears them, he gives up affection for his wife. So be careful, all of you there. The Bhramara-gita, this example is being given. The Devis, the wives of the Devas are hearing Krishna's flute and they feel attracted to Krishna, thinking, oh, what will my husband think about this? They give up attraction to them. But the Devas, while hearing the flute of Krishna, they develop female sensibilities attracting to the Krishna flute, and they are thinking, oh, what my wife will think if she knows. They lost all attraction for their wives. And all of them were attracted to Krishna, which of course is the idea. If you have a husband or wife, the idea is not that you increase your attraction to her or to him in material terms, but she or he helps you to increase your attraction towards Krishna, basically. That's the whole idea of Grihastha Ashram. So Sri Radha again seems to be condemning that, but is actually praising that. So she continues through Vishwanath. The same is also true for a child, for example, in connection with his mother. And his father, he will leave all attraction for them, and the parents will leave all attraction for the boy if they enter in touch with Harikatha. Therefore, by this mutual rejection, they will all become ruined. Which again, we understand it from our sadhaka perspective is no, that's real success. But she speaks from the perspective of the Lila and Deviant man. Though the people, she continues, who develop a taste for Krishna's pastime as soft-hearted, they also become hard-hearted, as we mentioned, merciless and ungrateful after hearing the pastimes of Krishna, who is hard-hearted, merciless, and ungrateful. And just by hearing about Krishna, they immediately give up their homes and families, including even their parents and sisters-in-law, who then suffer with no other means of support, and without even enough money for the next day's food. Again, gopi situation. They become penniless after leaving their families due to having forgotten to tie up even a few coins in their cloth, says Vishwanath Chakravarti, because of the agitation of their minds while leaving. That's the case of the gopis. They are at home and Krishna plays the flute, no consideration, no consequence of what will happen. That's Vrindavan, the land when they do not measure any consequence whatsoever. They're just driven by passionate attraction. That's the very idea of ragatmika. They are made of that passionate love for Krishna. There's no calculation at all. And Shirata continues saying, and this is not the case of only one man or two, or just 3 or 4 people. This has been the case with countless hundreds and thousands of people. And she's giving testimony for them. Then Vishwanath, following in the footsteps of Srila Jiva Goswami, says, if we read Dina as Dira, that can be possible, that will mean in spite of seeing their wife cry, they are unmoved and hard-hearted and they leave home, implying the same idea we're mentioning. And of course, then Vishwanath invokes the bumblebee, and rather hears the bumblebee asking her, how do these people maintain their lives, who run from their homes without discrimination? And Shri Radha will answer, according to Vishwanath Chakravarti, that just like birds, they live by begging, just collecting small amounts of wheat and other grains, here and there, a little bit here, a little bit there, like madhukar, a little bit of pollen in this flower, instead of taking substantial charity from one single person being supported. But no, they do not have that advantage. And Sri Vishwanath says that the word Eva in this verse, which generally is translated as like this, like that, is often usually instead of Iha. Actually, in the verse, the word is Iha, it's not Eva. Iha means here in Braj, as we mentioned, and Eva means just like. So if we take Iha as Eva, Sri Vishwanath says that in that case, that will mean such people, Sri Radha says, come here begging in Braj, the place of suffering, and they will suffer even more in our association, just like us. That's the idea. They come here, they become just like us by association. And interestingly, Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also concludes his purport saying, like, at this point, someone may say the following, object the following: Krishna Lila is like a poisonous mixture of sugarcane juice, very sweet, and powdered seeds of the datura plant, poisonous stuff. A combination of the two. Poisonous but too sweet to eat, basically. And the speaker of Krishna's pastimes will be considered a murderer in the dress of a saint, and the Puranas are the net. And the speaker of Harikatha may be seen wandering from forest to forest with the Puranas tucked under his arm. And Vyasa and others are the makers of this net, which teaches that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And to this possible argument, Sri Radha will reply, yes. And it is for this reason, yes, in one sense only, as we'll see. It is for this reason that Krishna has accepted the role of the Supreme. So again, we had here another example of Aishwarya. Sri Radha said, yeah, I think that's why Krishna accepted to be God. Because he's thinking, just like the gopis, I will make all the people in the universe fall into an ocean of suffering. Indeed, so that's Aishwarya again. She's accepting for a minute in her ecstasy. That's why Krishna is God. He accepted being God because of this. For her, the idea of God is totally secondary, as you will see. as we can see. And she continues saying, indeed, seeing others suffering is Krishna's only happiness. And as a result, Krishna must bear the consequence of giving such misery to others, not Vyasa and other sages. They are not to blame. Only Krishna is to blame. And that's why he became God, basically, to make us and everyone else suffer. That's the madness of Radha's subjective view of him in this particular Sanchari Bhav. So, so then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, as we can see, there are thousands of implications in this verse. So we may have just a glimpse of some of them, but he makes this point. There are thousands, like implying I could continue just commenting on this verse for eternity and there's no end, but so many nuances, so many possibilities and levels, because that's what love implies. And someone who has love and speaks, so many multi-layered, multi-dimensional ideas are happening, all of them simultaneously at the same time. That's the magic of love, the madness of love. So thousands of implications in this verse. And then he says, go into the type of particular mad talk Sri Radha is speaking here. He says that through condemnation here, Radha is indirectly praising Krishna, as we already mentioned. And therefore, she's establishing the super excellence of Shuddha Bhakti in the form of Harikatha. Again, the glories of Harikatha, the effect of Harikatha. By mentioning the example of the birds, he continues, Sri Radha is showing that it is appropriate to leave Krishna because he inflicts pain on innocent people. Such remorseful statements constitute Abhijalpa. So this is a type of Chitra Jalpa. Remember, every verse of Bhramara Gītā is an example of one of 10 types of Chitra Jalpa, of colorful talks, mad talks. So this is Abhijalpa. How is Abhijalpa defined? By Srila Rupa Goswami in Ujjval Nilamani. He says that when a lover indirectly states with remorse that her beloved is fit to be given up because he's so cruel that he tortures even the innocent birds, or because that person makes other people act like birds, as we were seeing, such speech is called Abhijalpa. So here we find that idea even with the example of the bird in itself, which further illustrates these verses fit to be identified in that particular context. So before reaching our conclusion, let's read one more time the verse, but this time through the lips of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, that, as we know, he has rendered this Bhramara Gītā in poetry, poeticized version in Bengali. So now we will share just the translation, the English translation of that such Bengali poetry. So he's saying, or Sri Radha is saying through him, I know that Krishna Katha has the potency to destroy the creeper of the three Vargas, Dharma, Artha, and Kama. If one drinks even a drop of the nectarian Krishna's pastimes through his ears, he will abandon everything, becoming a virtuous person free of attachment and hatred. Without trying to enjoy any sense gratification, he is like a bird, subsisting just on alms, and he quickly gives up any connections with his gloomy household and the homes of his relatives. Although it is very suitable, I am unable of that. So Sri Radha, through Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, laments here at the end. And he's showing the real intention that all this is very suitable, actually. That's the idea. So, what we can say in this connection? Well, to begin with, that certainly the way in which Sri Radha is glorifying Krishna, remember, he's glorifying Krishna, she's the very personification of Krishna, Kirtan, so nothing except for Kirtan can come from her, out of her. So she's glorifying Krishna by finding faults in him, in verses like this one. And this type of praise is far superior to the way in which other great personality sages like Narad Muni, Vyasadeva glorify Krishna reverentially by acknowledging his Aishwarya, his position as Bhagavan. Sri Radha may acknowledge Krishna as Bhagavan, but in the context of abusing him, and that's much more pleasing to him. So again, here we find in this verse, as I mentioned, deep praise hidden in the form of condemnation. So this receives a particular name. This is called in Sanskrit Vyaja Stuti. So Vyaja Stuti, Stuti means glorification, and Vyaja has to do with condemnation. So Vyaja Stuti is a particular type of expression which implies, again, praise through condemnation. There are two nice verses that Srila Rupa Goswami shares in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu in the first section of the book, second chapter, verses 239 and 240. I will share them with you, which are perfect examples of this Vyaja Stuti. The first one may be more well known, but actually the second one is even more clear in this connection. There's a more intense condemnation, if you will. So the first verse says like this. I'll read just the English translation here. Oh, my friend, if you desire to enjoy with your friends and relatives, then do not look upon the form of the Lord of Krishna called Govinda, wandering near Keshitirtha on the bank of the Jamuna river, with a slight smile on his lips, posed with three bands in his body, eyes glancing everywhere in a crooked fashion, flute placed on his red lower lip like a tender bud, and shining gloriously with a peacock feather. So again, it seems I'm giving caution to you, be careful. But the caution is, if you desire to enjoy with your friends and relatives, in other words, if you want to remain in the deep, dark hole of material attachment, then do not go to Keshigat, then do not hear that flute. And when you are saying all that, you start to glorify Krishna more and more. Then do not go to that beautiful Tribanga Lalita personality, which has a peacock feather and which is charming and so on. But it seems you are criticizing all that. It seems you are criticizing what you are praising, and it seems you are praising what you are actually criticizing. And again, the second verse of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is even more intense in this connection. So it says like this, and all of this is connected to specifically to Harikatha and to the hearing of the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, what we are trying to do at this very moment. So please do not feel that I'm insulting you. I'm just repeating the verse. So the verse starts saying, oh, idiots, how fortunate you are. I think that you must have been hearing all the syllables one by one of the verses of the 10th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, because your ears are now denouncing the most auspicious goals of Dharma, Artha, and Kama, and even decrying the fourth goal of liberation, which is most blissful. So again, we are not being actually called idiots. This is indirect language. It seems you are condemning all that thing, but actually you are glorifying, oh, this 10th canto has the potential to uproot not only the three varga, Dharma, Artha, Kama, but even to the point of taking you moksha laguta krit. Mukti, liberation, is seen as totally insignificant. So this is, in other words, this 10th canto, Dasama Skanda of the Bhagavatam, is taking us to Panchama Purushartha Prem, Pancham Purushartha, the fifth goal of life, post-liberated status, even above freedom from samsara. So actually this so-called unfortunate is the real fortune, and so on. So this is how Vyaja Stuti works, basically. And also sometimes they say, in the context of alankar, poetic ornamentation, literary ornamentation, this verse can be called aprastuta prasamsa, which basically has to do with conveying the subject by something that is not the subject. So this is another way of also referring in the technical terms to this type of expression, find also in this verse, of course, found in this verse of Bhramara Gītā. So give me some more minutes. I will like to continue and to close basically today's meeting by doing what I promised some weeks ago to Archana Siddhi. She very kindly suggested the reading of a book called Prem Samput. And in this connection, we will share some words today about that. And this with the intention of assuring that we are not misunderstanding on one side Radha's words as if she's not actually loving Krishna. We shouldn't think like this. Or also to be careful to not misunderstand that Krishna is really cruel and he does not love Sri Radha and so on. So these two misunderstandings can happen when we hear a section like Bhramara-gita. So to make it clear that we are not going through that, we will share some brief summary of a book called Prem Samput. And I will recommend each of you to read that, to study that in this connection as well, as a complementary study to the Bhramara-gita, which is a short book written by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So this point is, in this book, all this is very, very clear, how much Sri Radha loves Krishna, how much Sri Krishna loves Sri Radha, both directions. So in the same way as we need to understand what is that thing that Krishna feels for her and how he's trying to reciprocate with Sri Radha and the gopis, and we have tried to speak about that by quoting Sri Rupa's Uddhav Sandesh, his book when he's sending Uddhav and putting so much clarification into the message he has to convey, how much he loves each one of the Brajavasis, or when we spoke about how Krishna's Mahaprabhu, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Dev, accepts sannyas to show the gopis how much I love you and I will try to give up my family ties as you gave up your family ties for me. So when I sent Uddhav to Braj, I didn't do that just to pacify my parents, as you said. They say this before in this section. No, because of you mainly, actually. So in the same way we need to understand how Krishna actually loves Sri Radha, the same way we need to understand what is that thing that Sri Radha feels beyond what seems to be, what the apparent situation seems to be. So we already shared some words from the Hamsadut and some of these messages that Lalita sent through the Swan. But now we will share some words about Prem Samput. So we are, as you say, resorting to some other complementary works that are really nourishing for our understanding of this topic. So I will share some brief summary of Prem Samput here, hopefully to tempt you to embrace the whole work from tip to toe. So basically, again, brief summary. Krishna appears in front of Sri Radha, but disguised as a heavenly damsel, with the excuse that, oh, I was in Swarga. Sri Radha asks, who are you? You are an unknown girl for us here, but you are so attractive, so beautiful. Tell me, who are you? Are you a goddess? So she told, yes, I'm coming. I'm descending from Swarga because all the ladies there were actually disturbed by the sound of a flute. So I was intrigued about the source of that sound. So I descended to earth and I got to meet the source of that flute, of course, Krishna. And I was able to witness the Rasa-lila, the sacred circular dance between Krishna and the gopis. And so this heavenly damsel, which is again Krishna in disguise, starts to glorify Sri Radha's love for Krishna, the nobility of her affection, but she starts to criticize Krishna, saying, Krishna doesn't deserve you. You are so grateful for him. He's a womanizer. He's a debauchee. He abandoned the gopis. If we go to the Rasa-lila, he abandoned the gopis first and ran only with Sri Radha, and then he abandons Sri Radha as well. So he's such a cruel guy. So basically what this heavenly damsel, Krishna himself, is saying, he's repeating all the things that Sri Radha herself is saying here in the Bhramara-gita. He's ungrateful, he's cruel, he abusing Krishna. But we will see that in Prem Samput, Sri Radha will say, no, this is not like this. What she herself is saying this in the Bhramara-gita. So basically she's implying only me can speak about Krishna, nobody else. She has the right to speak like that because she has a particular type of prem. So unless you are Sri Radha, unless you have her bhav, you cannot speak these words. So only Sri Radha and her close, dearmost, like the Manjaris, like the Sakhis, will be able to abuse Krishna, criticize him in the context of loving him, in the context of giving him pleasure and increasing the experience of rasa for both parties. So Sri Radha replies saying, no, it's not like this. And she starts to speak to this heavenly, so-called heavenly damsel about Krishna, and nothing compares with him, his beauty, his love, his sweetness. And Sri Radha starts to imagine, oh, you will be so happy if you were able to meet Krishna and give him enjoyment we will be so happy being with him. So she shows, I have no jealousy actually. I'm thinking in terms of increasing Krishna's happiness. And then she continues to give a whole dissertation about the nature of love, about the nature of prem. Prem, Samput means the locket love. Samput means locket. So Sri Radha says that the nature of unconditional love is such that once it manifests, it is not easily destroyed, or it's not destroyed at all. This love is so firm and so vast that it never wavers, nor can it ever be annihilated, even after hearing criticism of the loved one, which is what Radha is witnessing. These other ladies criticizing Krishna, but Sri Radha's love for Krishna is not wavering, it's just increasing. So then Sri Radha invites this heavenly damsel again, live with me, stay with me here in Braj, and gradually you will understand the nature of Prem. This is not something so easy to grasp, basically. By being close to me, by witnessing my Prem, you will be able to understand. Sri Radha says it is not possible to understand the Prem that Sri Krishna and I have for each other just by talking about it. It is only possible to understand it by observing it, by witnessing someone who has it. Uddhav was sent to Vrindavan with that purpose in mind. He heard about that, but he had to witness that in person, and Krishna sent him to Braj in that connection. So then Sri Radha continues saying, anyone who says, this is the extent of Prem, this is Prem, this is the nature of Prem, or this is not the nature of Prem, they know nothing about Prem. They speak lip service to Prem. You have to have it, you have to witness it. Prem is swasambedya. Swasambedya means it can only be experienced by itself. Unless you have Prem, you can understand Prem. Unless you become mad, you can understand a mad person. And she shared so many other considerations about Prem, like Prem cannot remain strong if it is expressed on the outside, explicitly, directly, with words such as, I love you dearly. On the contrary, Prem will decrease. We will see so much that in this world. I love you, I love you, I love you, and eventually nobody ends up loving anyone. And someone who really loves someone, they won't say, I love you, I have love for Krishna. That's what Shastra says. Those who say they love Krishna, they do not love Krishna. And so on. And then Radha continues defining Prem. And she says, when the deep emotion that binds a young couple does not break despite many reasons, it is called Prem. That's a very nice definition that actually is given by Sri Rupa Goswami. Prem means that type of emotion that binds two people together despite all obstacles. And Prem is not only not diminished by obstacles, but it is nourished by obstacles, as we spoke recently. And there the famous example comes with the lion and the elephant. The elephant appears like an obstacle to the lion trying to attack him, but the lion defeats the elephant and feeds on the elephant. So he nourishes himself on the obstacle. Or sometimes the example is given of a current of the river. The current is flowing on some speed, and suddenly the current of the river is obstructed by something. And how the water will continue its course, the water will overcome the obstruction and flow with redoubled force. So again, the obstacle created intensified, upgraded, maximized expression of that same flow. And so love is a flow, if you will, it's a current. Sri Radha's name, and the opposite is dhara. Dhara means current, or to flow. So she flows towards Krishna. And if obstacles come on the way, that intensifies her flow. So in conclusion, we could say, she said, attraction for the beloved increases in proportion to the obstacles encountered. So that's real love. So we can have an experience of the opposite of that, maybe when not having love and some obstacle come and we get discouraged and we are thinking about abandoning everything or whatever, killing ourselves, who knows what, instead of increasing one's own passion. So many examples on the life of our saints, also the Goswamis not being able to join Mahaprabhu. They didn't get discouraged. The fire of their passion increased more and more. The obstacles were like fuel in their fire. That's the nature of Prem. Ahiri bhagati premna swabhava kutilavapit. Love moves in a crooked way like a snake, And that has many meanings, this idea. But one of them, Srila Sridhar Maharaj will say, the love moves in a crooked way because it embraces everything on its way, on its progress, and it's not leaving anything behind. So includes everything and nourishes from everything. That's the nature of Prem. Everything has the potential to nourish that Prem. So Prem is all embracing, all pervading, and is so powerful and pure that has the capacity of taking even the most impure thing and make that an udipana, something that will instill inspiration in that particular Prem. Bharat is famous, the author of Natya Shastra. He further defines this type of Prem, which has to do a lot with Parakiya Bhav. We are entering here in this direction. Shiraj is speaking about Prem, but Prem among a couple, so that has to do with Madhurya, and now we go to Parakiya, which is characterized by obstacles from society and family. So Bharat will say that the Prem that is strongly objected to by society and religion, which means the Prem of lovers, in which the lover, the Nayaka, and the beloved, the Nayika, must hide their amorous desires, and in which loving union is difficult to attain, that's called Manmata Sambandita Parama Priti, or the supreme passionate affection. So that's how Parakiya could be defined. That's objected by society and religion. Dharma, that goes against Dharma, is a transgression to Dharma. They must hide their love. Gopi means had to do with Gupta. The root Gupta is there, to hide. It's not explicitly shown. That's why we find so much indirect knowledge, indirect speech, especially in Madhurya Bhav. It seems something, but actually means something else. And the union is difficult to attain in the sense so many daily obstacles, but all of this, again, nourishing the passion. So that's a supreme passionate affection, the highest form considered by our acharyas. So then Sri Radha continues, speaking about Krishna, glorifying Krishna, expressing her love for him, his love for her. She defines Krishna as an ocean of prem. He's both an ocean of prem and a mine of jewel-like qualities. And here comes a very important point. Bear with me some extra minutes today, please. His deceitfulness, his fickleness, his crookedness, all the things that she seems to be criticizing here, and other such qualities are extremely charming. He devises how to increase a woman's love for him by presenting his prem in the semblance of lust before them all. That's a very important point, because Krishna's attitude seems to be totally worthy of condemnation. He seems to be a teenager full of lust. But Sri Radha is mentioning, no, in the context and dynamics of Parakiya Bhav, forbidden love, he's hiding his actual love for us and acting as something else, as love. It appears as if lust. That's what we call Kama Rupa Bhakti. That's the love of the gopis for Krishna. And somehow that's the love of Krishna for the gopis. Kama Rupa, it takes the Rupa, the form of Kam, lust, but actually it's the purest type of love. So he acts like this because he knows this attitude will increase also the love in the other person. So that's what Krishna said to the gopis. Why you left us in the Rasa-lila? To increase your love. Why you separated from us? To increase your love. And that's the best. Because I love you, I wish the best for you. So wish the best for you means wish your prem to increase. So I realized this was the best way to do that. So that's why he takes that particular stance. And all this fickleness and deceitfulness that seems so condemnable, Shirada says they're totally charming. And in the context of that, then Shirada in Prem Samput explains in detail why Krishna left her in the Rasa-lila. In the context of Prem. I won't enter into the details of that. And then the heavenly damsel replies to Shirada, okay, my dear Saki, you have explained to me the following characteristics of Prem. And Krishna himself repeats them to see, let's see if I learn them properly. Because remember, he's learning from Shirada what's Prem eventually. Amishisya Guru Nada Radhikir Premam Nat. I learned the following from you. Even the faults of the beloved may be perceived as good qualities. The many troubles given by the beloved may appear to be nectar. One with Prem is unable to bear even the slightest difficulty felt by the beloved. We see this in the gopis also. They can even tolerate Krishna's being lotus feet souls being pricked by some stones in the forest and offering their softest part in the body for that not to happen. One with prem is unable to give up the body, even if he wishes to. That's the situation of Sri Radha here in separation from Krishna. She wants, but she cannot. And at every step, one perceives unprecedented glories in developed, even when there are none. And Radha, this prem is in you alone. So it's important, this point here. The heavenly damsel, who is Krishna himself, he's in full humility witnessing the degree of Radha's prem, and himself in full humility feeling, I don't have prem for you. This prem is only in you, Krishna is saying. He's saying that, actually saying that. You have such a prem, such an integrity is in you, I don't have that prem. Of course, he's not saying I'm Krishna, but he's saying in the disguise of the heavenly damsel, Krishna doesn't have this prem, only you have this prem, because he as Krishna is feeling that, I don't have that prem. You feel you perceive unprecedented glories in the beloved, even when there are none. Krishna is feeling, I have no glories, I have no good qualities. I'm actually a rascal, but you say that I'm so charming. That's the glory of your love. So someone who has prem will feel that, and that humility will be there. Sanatana Goswami said, humility and prem nourish one another. Prem takes to higher humility takes to prem, and so on. So this lady says like this, Krishna is a heavenly damsel. Only you have this prem, not Krishna, because Krishna himself feels, I don't have that. And all this can be connected to, of course, the desire of he tasting that and Mahaprabhu and so on. Our Guru Maharaj spoke about Prem Samput in the last lecture on Gaur Punim in this connection. That's a very recommended one, again, if you want to go back there. So to this, Sri Radha replies very nicely. We are almost reaching out end here. She says, when she hears only you have this prem, not Krishna, she hears this separation, on one side you, on the other side Krishna, say, factually, the real truth is this. Krishna and me, we are one soul. So it is not possible for one soul to become two. And she gives a very nice analogy. In a lake, there are two lotuses, one blue lotus and one golden lotus, Krishna and Radha. And these two lotuses may bloom from a single stem. So in the same way, she says, our two bodies, one blue and one yellow, golden, are connected as one life. As bodies, we are separate, but by nature, we are one. Krishna is by nature blissful, Ananda, Anandamaya Vyasat, and I by nature, I'm joyful, Ladini. And just as fire and its burning potency are one, there's no difference between the potency and the possessor of potency, between Shakti and Shaktiman. We cannot be distinguished from each other when seen as a person and the person's potency. But for the sake of rasa, this is our point, for the sake of rasa, since Brahman is rasa, rasavaisaha, we manifest in separate forms as Radha and Krishna. And without pastime, without lila, which means loving interaction among the two, we cannot relish each other. And without form, we cannot perform pastimes. So form is facilitating this relishing. When the wind of separation from each other blows, the flames of our two bodies tremble, and we both faint at the same time. So she's making it clear. It's not only me in separation, suffering and fainting and so on. We both doing that simultaneously at the same time because we are one. And two at the same time. And the Sakis, all of whom are experts, very anxiously try to stop this wind from blowing, this separation from happening. So they remove all our distress and restore our peaceful condition by arranging for us to enter the house of happiness in each other's company. Union, somehow or other. So finally, and just to close, how I will tell you the end of the story with your permission, but you please read it in detail, because there are many nice verses there. So after hearing, remember, here is Krishna taking lessons, upgrading his own experience of Prem by witnessing his own Shakti personified speaking. So Krishna, as the heavenly damsel, will tell Radha here, okay, but I need to see some proof that your words are true in connection to Krishna. All the things, if you and Krishna are one, if you're experiencing something simultaneously, then if you can make him appear at this very moment, make him present by just meditating in him, then I will believe that you and him are one and all the things you are telling about him. So Krishna, the heavenly damsel, is presenting this challenge to Sri Radha, and she accepts that. Say, okay, and she sits like a yogini, and closes her eyes and starts to meditate and to pray to her Ista Devata. And Sri Radha's Ista Devata is Surya Dev, the deity of family, Vrishabhanuras, and so on. So she starts to meditate and pray to Surya Dev, please, Surya Dev, if all my austerities and offerings have bear fruit, please make Krishna appear. And if my love for him is real, please confirm that. And meanwhile, Krishna is taking all these garments of the heavenly damsel out and appearing as Krishna himself, flute in hand, and all the gopis and manjaris who were witnessing that are about to say something, and Krishna says, do not say anything. So Sri Radha starts to meditate about Krishna, and suddenly she opens her eyes, and there Krishna is confirming Sri Radha's word. All this beautiful, charming lila narrated in Prema Samput actually happened. Why? Because Krishna wanted to establish the glory of Sri Radha's love in this world, for all the people in this world. And he knew this will happen if her love neither faltered or decreased slightly, even after she heard criticism about him, from him, in the form of this lady. And it did happen in that way. So in this way, we can see how, although it seems that Krishna may not love Radha, we can see how he loves her. And similarly, we can see how she loves him, especially in the context of this Bhramara-gita. So let me finish just this meeting with one charming, beautiful example in this connection of how much Sri Radha loves him, even though it may seem otherwise at moments, like in this Bhramara-gita. And this is connected with Sri Radha's nose pearl. It is said that Sri Radha wears a pearl in her nose, below her nose, which is white, the pearl generally. But sometimes the pearl appears, or generally the pearl appears like half black in the upper section and half red in the lower section. So it seems like a gunja bead, like the gunja mala that Giriraj uses. So someone may ask, how's the pearl on Radha's nose become black and red, like gunja beads? And some ignorant poets, it is said, will say, oh, that's because of a reflection. The upper part, the black part, reflects on Sri Radha's black eyeliner, the kajal, so it becomes black. And the lower part of the pearl reflects on Sri Radha's red lipstick and becomes red. But that's only the version of ignorant poets. Real learned poets will say something different. The red color represents Sri Radha's anurag, or passionate love for Krishna. And the blackish color, half of the pearl, represents Krishna himself. So Krishna and Krishna's anurag affect, and these colors came out and embrace the pearl every time Sri Radha breathes through her nose. And this breathing colors her nose pearl, because she's breathing only for Krishna, her Praneshwar, her Prananath, the Lord of her life. When one is in love, as I always say, you are not breathing, you are just sighing. So this confirms how she only lives for him. She's Krishna Mai. Everything in her is regarding Krishna. So some words we wanted to share today to further pound this post and rest assured that we are properly understanding this beautiful and bewildering and overwhelming Bhramara Gītā, this most esoteric and mysterious section of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. So we will allow some few minutes if any of you has any questions. I have given the option there in Zoom for you to unmute yourself. And if not, you can also send a text message or whatever. So Seems there are no questions today. Everyone is speechless, like Uddhav must be at this precise moment. We're hearing today's verse, so that's a good symptom. Whatever questions you may have, of course, during these days, you can leave them in the thread section. Also, in our Tattva Vivek Facebook group, we also encourage all of you to continue dialogue, the conversation, and discussion on these topics on a daily basis. So we may meet there as well. So we'll continue. We will finish today's discussion by offering our pranam, following the footsteps of Uddhav. He invokes this beautiful Bhagavad verse when leaving Braj, and he puts his head on the ground onto the feet of the Braja Gopikas under Harikatha, especially Sri Radha's Bhramara-gita, we could say, which has the power and potential to purify all three worlds. So we are in one of those sections with the hope of being sprinkled, at least with a speck dust, a drop, again, of this powerful Harikatha that we have seen today. Has the potential of not only cleaning ourselves from all material attachment, but bestowing on us anurag, divine attachment for Śrīmatī Rādhārāṇī Krishna. Bandinanda Brajastrinam Padarinam Abhikshnasa Jasam Harikatod Gitam Punati Bhuvanat. Srila Gurudev ki jai, Sriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Sri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai, Sri Bhramara Gītā ki jai, Gaur Bhaktavrinda ki jai, Gaur Pramananda, Hari Hari Bo. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyaiva ca patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta koti vaishnava vrinda ki jai. Gaur Hari Bo.